Hello, my name is Miranda and welcome back to my channel. It's lovely to have you here. I have the windows open right now because it's really hot, so if you hear anything, sorry about it. You're just gonna get the, ambient London experience from this video. You're welcome. And also, yes, I am wearing bat earrings in June, because Halloween is a state of mind. I don't even like Halloween, I just like bats. So today I am bringing you the next installment in my series, Vibes. It's back, baby. And today I'm going to be talking about books about loneliness. This was partly inspired by Jalen from Bar in the Bookcase, who did a video about, I think it was books about longing, and kind of a longing for a kind of different version of yourself. And yeah, kind of self-discovery. And I was like, that is a genre of book that I like a lot. But you know what else I like more than that? Books about loneliness and being sad. So yeah, all these books centre themes of loneliness, and also lots of them are about kind of home and belonging and trying to find a place where you belong. So the first one I want to talk about is a book that I'm actually still reading. It's been about 3 weeks and I still haven't finished this book. It's America Is Not the Heart by Elaine Castillo. So yeah, I started reading this kind of in like the last week of May for Asian Readathon, and I am really loving it. I really love it. I'm just not in the mood for reading right now, and also this is the text is quite small, so I'm going through it very slowly, but I am really enjoying it. So this is basically about a woman called Hero who moves to the US from the Philippines to live with some family for various reasons that you kind of figure out as you go, and it's essentially about her trying to find her place in this new country after being kind of taken away very suddenly from her community and everything that she sort of was familiar with, and not necessarily in the way that you would think, just by kind of being uprooted from a country. It's a bit more complicated than that. So yeah, it's about her finding her place in her family and also within a group of friends, and figuring out what she wants. And yeah, it's really, really beautifully written. There are lots of characters that you get to know, and lots of different kind of tangents about kind of family life and all the different relationships these characters have, which is something I love. I'm like, yeah, take me on this tangent. Let's go way off the rails and talk about a load of different stuff. And the thing that's interesting about this is that Hero's longing and loneliness is there, but it's not something that she kind of talks about or even thinks about explicitly, but it's always underlying, and it's almost like you don't realise that she is lonely or how lonely she is until she is finding other people. And yeah, I think it's really beautiful, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm about 100 pages from the end now, I think, and I'm very excited to see what happens in the rest of it because I'm loving it so far. Also, I am really liking reading it slowly because it means that I kind of get, I feel like I'm getting to know the characters over a period of time like they are getting to know each other, so it feels kind of right. Then another book that I read for Asian Readathon this year is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. So I didn't love this one entirely, but I think it is really good, and I know that lots of other people will really love it. So this is about Clara, who is an artificial friend, and she is at the beginning of the book waiting for a child to come and claim her and take her home so that she can fulfill her duty of being an artificial friend. And it's really interesting on loneliness because it's not an emotion that Clara feels, but she is very much attuned into it in other people. She is the narrator of the book, so you get everything from her perspective, and her purpose is to alleviate loneliness. And the loneliness that's discussed is a kind that is due to situations and circumstances that we don't know about entirely as readers, but it's also, that makes it kind of interesting because you're not sure what's happened, and you can kind of speculate about what in our world would lead to this kind of need for artificial friends to alleviate loneliness in children. Also the ending, if you've read it, the ending is really heartbreaking, but also not in interesting ways, and again with kind of how Clara experiences loneliness or experiences emotions like that. It's very interesting, and I would recommend it, even if I didn't entirely love everything about it. Then we have a classic, and I couldn't not include this because it literally has loneliness in the title, and that is The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall. So this is a kind of early 20th century classic about a woman called Stephen is her name, I think, and she basically grows up knowing that she's different, and essentially it's a kind of trajectory of her life, kind of figuring out that she is a lesbian. And sadly it is a book that is about kind of being rejected for who you are. It's not a, like, you know, a happy LGBTQ+ book, which is a shame, but you know, it is also the reality of you know, life for queer people at the time, and I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, there are moments of happiness and moments of like real love and connection, but a lot of it is about the main character kind of looking for people who understand her and people who she can find a kind of connection with. And the writing about loneliness because of, you know, not being accepted by society and feeling like an outcast because of your sexuality is really, really moving. Like, it's really beautiful, and I would highly recommend it. Then we have one that I read a couple of years ago, so I probably don't remember it entirely accurately, but it is The Mermaid and Mrs Hancock by Imogen Hermes Gower. This is about a merchant who lives in London in the kind of 1700s, I think, and one of his sea captains comes to him on a stormy night and says, "I have sold your ship and I have bought a mermaid with it," and he says, "Here is the mermaid, this is yours now," and things ensue. So the merchant, who is the main character, he has, I think, lost his wife and children. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that he is a very lonely character, and suddenly he is kind of plunged into this world of like fame and performance and glamour, and he's trying to kind of find his place in it, and again find real meaningful connection in a world of people who just want to know him for his kind of, you know, his newfound fame. And it's also fame that he doesn't know what to do with. He doesn't know how to be suddenly in the public eye and be kind of around these different circles. And the way he's trying to navigate that is, it gets quite emotional sometimes, I think, as far as I can remember, but also quite interesting, because then some of the characters that he encounters are also lonely and looking for kind of real meaningful connection, and yeah, it's a really great like historical novel, one of the best I've read, and I love it very much. Then we have Hagseed by Margaret Atwood. This is another book that is about loneliness due to grief, because this is a retelling of The Tempest by William Shakespeare. Why did I say it like that? Shaky. The Shaky Man. It's essentially about a main character who has lost his daughter. Because of this, he kind of becomes a recluse and lives alone, and kind of almost like he sort of like has hallucinations that she's still there, and kind of talks to her, but there's also a kind of revenge story going on alongside this, about how he was kind of ousted from his job, but the main point about it is that it's about this character who is alone and doesn't know how to recover from his grief, and it gets incredibly moving and very sad and very beautiful. There you go. Then How We Fight for Our Lives by Saeed Jones. This is another one like The Well of Loneliness that is about a, well, it's a memoir rather than a novel, but it's about a queer person trying to find their place in the world, but specifically Saeed Jones is writing about his experiences as like growing up as a queer black boy, and it's, yeah, trying to kind of find real connection with people, and is sad. It's very sad. It's also very much about his relationship with his mum, and that all gets quite emotional as well. And yeah, it's kind of about him just trying to find himself and find his people, and it's really beautiful. I would recommend it. The audiobook is really good. He narrates it himself and I really enjoyed it. Then another memoir, My Name is Why by Lem Sissay. This memoir broke me into small pieces. So this is about Lem's childhood, growing up in care in the north of England after he was taken away from his mum, and it's so heartbreaking because you get the kind of loneliness of wanting a family and being deprived that, and again, like, rejection, but all from a child's point of view. What's really beautiful about this book is that because it's kind of made up from memories, and like social workers' reports and stuff, sometimes things don't quite match up, and you're not entirely sure what's happened because he doesn't quite remember like the reasons that people were doing things, so you feel very much like uncertain, and exactly like he did when he was just, you know, wondering why people wouldn't love him. And honestly, it's incredible, and it's probably my favourite book I've read so far this year. I think, yeah, it's beautiful, and again, he narrates the audiobook and it is gorgeous. Then another book I read last month, it is How Much of These Hills Is Gold by Sipam Zhang. So this is about two siblings who have been recently orphaned because their father has just died and their mother died a few years before, and they are trying to find a place to bury their father, so they kind of go on this like adventure through the American West, trying to find a place to bury their father. And it's all about kind of trying to find your place in the world and trying to find where you belong, and it hurts so bad. The setting of like gold rush era American West really adds to this sense of like emptiness and longing and loneliness, because they're always kind of on the move, and the skies are so big and it's so empty, and it's a delicious book and I love it very much. Then we have another book that I won't shut up about. It's Transcendent Kingdom by Hagseed. I read this in April, I think, and I really loved it. So, birds again, sorry. Do you mind? So this is about Gifty, who is I think PhD student, doing research into neuroscience and the kind of chemistry behind reward-seeking behaviour, because she has a kind of family history of addiction, and a kind of personal connection to that. And Gifty kind of gets like caught up in her research, and looking for like meaning and answers in her in science, because her family is very religious and she can't find answers in religion, so she looks for them in science. It's also about how she kind of retreats into her research, and like gets very much focused on that, and not on the people around her, and it's about various kind of people who try and bring her out of that, and yeah, it's kind of about the loneliness of like working on one thing, and caring for other people and not being able to care for yourself. Then we have Open Water by Caleb Zuma Nelson, which I read earlier this year, and even though I didn't love it as much as everyone else seems to, I did really enjoy it, and I think it is an amazing debut. So this is about a couple who live in South London, and it's about their like on-off falling in love, falling out of love relationship, but it's mostly about the narrator, who isn't a narrator, because even though it's from his point of view, the narration is in second person, but it's mostly about his kind of issues with communication and not being able to express with words what he feels, and there are some really beautiful moments in it about how kind of art and music can express what we feel better than even our own thoughts can, but also his loneliness from living as a black man in Britain and having to live constantly kind of with the awareness that his life could be taken at any time for no reason, and not being able to like talk about that with anybody, and all of that is incredibly well done, and it's an amazing book. So lastly, we have Earthlings by Soyaka Murata. So this is about Natsuki, who suffers some really terrible things as a child, and feels very kind of detached from her family and also the world around her. So she feels like she is an alien, and doesn't feel like she kind of fits into the idea of what a human should be. And although this book is largely about trauma, it is also about just feeling like you don't fit in anywhere, and like you have nobody looking out for you, and it is really heartbreaking and very, very dark, but I think it does speak to something about, you know, kind of having suffered things and then not feeling like you have anybody who can look after you. Yeah, it's sad, but it's good. So there you have it, my books about loneliness before I get cut off by the sun. I hope you enjoyed this, and I really, really hope that you pick up some of these books because they're so good. I say that at the end of most of my videos, but I really mean it this time. I always mean it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts on any of these books if you've read them, and I will see you very soon.